So let's talk about you. No, really, what makes you, you? Today, we're going to dive into the building blocks of your personality. We'll look at everything from your gut reactions to your most ingrained habits and figure out just how much of who we are is actually learned along the way. Let me ask you something. Think about the sound your phone makes when you get a message. That little ding or buzz. Why does it make your heart skip a beat or your stomach do a little flip, even before you know who it's from? That feeling, that's a learned response, and it's the perfect place to start our journey.
So, where do we even begin? Well, our story starts with a really powerful and kind of simple idea: learning by association. And for that, we have to thank the Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov, who accidentally unlocked a huge secret about the automatic, reflexive parts of our minds.
And what's wild is that Pavlov wasn't even trying to study psychology. He was studying digestion in dogs, but he kept noticing this weird thing happening. The dogs would start drooling before the food even arrived. Just the sound of the lab assistant's footsteps coming down the hall was enough to get them going. He had stumbled onto something huge.
Okay, so here's the play-by-play of how he figured this out. You start with something that's totally natural, a reflex. A dog sees food, it salivates. Simple. Then you introduce something neutral, like ringing a bell. The dog doesn't care about the bell. But then you start ringing the bell right before you bring out the food, over and over again. The dog's brain starts to connect the dots, and pretty soon, all you have to do is ring the bell and the dog starts salivating, no food in sight. A brand new connection was just learned.
Let's break down the jargon, because it's actually pretty simple. The food is the unconditioned stimulus. It's the natural trigger. The drooling is the unconditioned response, the natural reaction. Now, the bell starts out as nothing, but through pairing, it becomes the conditioned stimulus, the learned trigger. And the new behavior, salivating just to the bell, that's the conditioned response. It's a basic formula that explains so much.
And this is where things get, well, a little dark. Because this doesn't just work on dogs. In a pretty infamous experiment, researchers took this idea and applied it to a baby boy they called Little Albert. They showed him a fuzzy white rat, which he wasn't afraid of at all. But then they started making a loud, terrifying noise every time he reached for the rat. It didn't take long for him to become terrified of the rat itself. This is how deep-seated fears, phobias, even parts of an anxious personality can get wired into us through a simple, learned link.
Okay, so that's one piece of the puzzle. But obviously, we're not just walking bundles of automatic reflexes, right? We make choices, we act. And this brings us to our second major idea, championed by B.F. Skinner. He argued that we are active learners, and who we become is shaped by the consequences of our actions.
So what's the big difference here? It really boils down to one word: choice. Pavlov's conditioning is totally involuntary, it's a reflex. But Skinner's operant conditioning is all about voluntary behavior. We operate on the world around us, we do stuff, and the results we get back tell us whether we should do it again.
Skinner's most famous setup was this little contraption called the Skinner box. He'd put a hungry rat inside. Now, at first, the rat just sniffs around, does its own thing. But by pure chance, it bumps a lever and poof, a little pellet of food drops down. You can bet that rat starts to put two and two together. Pretty soon, it's not an accident anymore. It learns, pressing this lever gets me a reward. Its behavior has been actively shaped.
Skinner broke it down into 4 main types of consequences. So if you want to make a behavior happen more often, you use reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is adding something good, like getting paid for your work. Negative reinforcement is taking away something bad, like when you buckle your seatbelt to stop that annoying beeping sound. Now, if you want to make a behavior happen less often, you use punishment. Positive punishment is adding something bad, like getting a speeding ticket, and negative punishment is taking away something good, like a parent taking away video game privileges.
And if you think this is just for rats in a lab, I want you to think about your phone again. Every like you get on a post, that's positive reinforcement. But here's the key: it's unpredictable. You never know which post will get a lot of likes and which will get none. Skinner called this a variable ratio schedule, and he found it's the single most powerful way to lock in a habit. It's the exact same principle that makes slot machines in Vegas so incredibly addictive.
So, we've got learning by association and learning by consequences. But what about all the things we learn without ever doing them ourselves? That brings us to our third giant leap forward, from a psychologist named Albert Bandura, who showed us that we learn a massive amount just by watching other people.
Yeah, Bandura's whole thing was that we are fundamentally social creatures. We don't have to touch the hot stove ourselves to learn that it burns. We can just watch someone else do it and learn the lesson from the sidelines. He called this observational learning, and it's a huge part of how we figure out the world.
And to prove this, he set up what is maybe one of the most famous experiments in all of psychology, the Bobo doll experiment. The setup was simple. He had a bunch of little kids watch an adult in a room with a big inflatable clown doll named Bobo. The big question was, if the kids saw the adult beating up on the doll, would they do the same thing when they got their turn?
And the results? Well, they were crystal clear. The kids who saw the adult get rewarded or praised for being aggressive, they were the most aggressive by far. But the kids who saw the adult get punished for it, they were the least aggressive. And this showed something really important. All the kids learned the aggressive behavior just by watching, but whether they decided to do it depended on the consequences they saw someone else get.
This leads to maybe Bandura's most powerful idea, something called self-efficacy. It's a fancy term for a simple concept. It's your belief in yourself. It's that voice in your head that says, I can do this. And Bandura showed that when you see someone who's kind of like you succeed at something, your own self-efficacy goes way up. We don't just copy actions, we learn confidence, which becomes a huge part of our personality.
Okay, so we have these three huge theories: Pavlov, Skinner, Bandura. You might think they're all fighting for the top spot, but that's not it at all. Instead, they actually weave together perfectly to give us a really complete picture of how we become who we are. So let's do a quick recap. We have Pavlov, who showed us our brain is an association machine, automatically linking things together. Then we have Skinner, who showed us that our choices, our actions, are molded by rewards and punishments. And finally, we have Bandura, who revealed that so much of what we know comes from just watching the people around us.
So when you really think about it, you are this incredible symphony of learned behaviors. That jump you feel when your phone dings, that's Pavlov. The habit of checking it every 2 minutes, that's Skinner. And knowing what to type, what emojis to use, how to act online, that's all Bandura. All three are constantly at play, shaping the person you are in this very moment.
And that leaves us with one last, and I think really powerful thought. If so much of who we are, our fears, our habits, our confidence, is learned, that means it's not set in stone. It means things can be unlearned, and new things can be learned to take their place. So that really just leaves one question. What do you want to learn next?